everybody. Today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2020, and it is 2:30. I'm sorry, it's 2:30 p.m. Welcome to the City of Miami virtual public hearing for the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. My name is Roberto Tasoy. I'm an assistant director with the Department of Housing and Community Development, and I will be guiding you throughout this presentation. We also have present today Mr. Alfredo Duran, Deputy Director, and other city staff who assist me in making this virtual public hearing possible. Christine Bermudez and Alexander Jorge from the Department of Housing and Community Development, Luis Castillo from Communications, and Manny Otero and Oscar Torrecillas team from ITD. Today's agenda includes an introduction to the analysis of impediments to fair housing, as well as a brief definition of what it means to affirmatively further fair housing. We will then proceed to provide information on state and local laws and their applicability. We will explore some of the city's jurisdictional data, and we will end the presentation with impediments found and the actions suggested to overcome them. We will open the floor to those who are currently at City Hall ready to provide us with live comments. We will play pre-recorded video and audio messages that were left prior to this meeting, if available, and we will be reading comments left through the online comment form. If you have not had the opportunity to leave a comment yet, you can still access the online comment form by typing www.miamigov.com/HCDBPH in your web browser. This will take you to our department's virtual public hearing page. Look for the July 2nd, 2020 Analysis of Impediments Meeting BPH link, and you will be redirected to a page where you can access the online comment form. The online comment form will remain open until we reach the public comment section of this presentation, at which time it will be closed and no further comments will be accepted for today's public hearing. This online comment form has been open to receive comments for at least 48 hours prior to the start of this meeting. Also, as advertised in the Miami Herald on June 18th and on our website, please be reminded that the draft analysis of impediments, or AI, is available for review via email request to rtazoe@miamigov.com. The review and comment period already started on June 23rd and will end on July 22nd. All comments must be submitted in writing, again, to rtazoe@miamigov.com. Your comments will be added to the final version of the analysis of impediments. We will start this presentation by describing the reasons the Fair Housing Act was enacted. The Fair Housing Act protects people from discrimination when they are renting or buying a home, getting a mortgage, seeking housing assistance, or engaging in other housing-related activities. Additional protections apply to federally assisted housing. Who is protected? The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination of housing because of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. Additional protection for persons with disability refer to housing providers making reasonable accommodations and permitting reasonable modifications that may be necessary to allow persons with disabilities to enjoy their housing, provided that upon vacating the premises, those modifications are returned to the original state at tenant's cost. The Federal Fair Housing Act requires the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to administer housing and urban programs in a manner that affirmatively furthers fair housing. Although the extent of this requirement is not defined statutorily, HUD establishes the following requirements. Cities must conduct an analysis to identify impediments to fair housing choice within the jurisdiction. Appropriate actions must be taken to overcome the effects of any impediments identified in the analysis, and jurisdictions must maintain records reflecting the analysis and actions taken in this regard. Affirmatively furthering fair housing means that the jurisdiction will analyze and eliminate housing discrimination in the jurisdiction, promote fair housing for all citizens, provide opportunities for inclusive patterns of housing occupancy regardless of race, color, religion, sex, familial status, disability, and national origin. Promote housing that is structurally accessible to and usable by all persons, particularly persons with disabilities, and foster compliance with non-discrimination provisions of the Fair Housing Act. On a state level, Florida statutes delineate that it is against the law to discriminate in the sale, rental, financing, appraisal, or insuring of housing, in the provision of real estate brokerage service, or in the advertising of a dwelling on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, handicap, or familial status. Steering and blockbusting are also illegal. Aside from this, the Florida Fair Housing Act declares it illegal to discriminate in the sale, rental, advertising, financing, or providing brokerage services for housing. The city of Miami does not have a fair housing ordinance in its municipal code, but looks and adheres to Miami-Dade County Code to define unlawful housing practices. Miami-Dade County Civil and Human Rights Ordinance, codified as Chapter 11A of the Miami-Dade County Code, specifies that the classes protected from housing discrimination, which are race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, sex, pregnancy, age, disability, marital status, familial status, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, or source of income. The county unit responsible for adherence to the Civil and Human Rights Ordinance is the Office of Human Rights and Fair Employment Practices, and is related to the Miami-Dade County Commission on Human Rights. One aspect of assessing fair housing involves determining the representation of protected classes in the population and if any socioeconomic disparities exist. Miami residents are of an unusually diverse ethnic and racial background, with a large share of foreign-born residents, low median incomes, and an increasingly aging population of persons 65 and over. We analyzed these and other social trends in the city of Miami with data pulled directly from the Census Bureau. The following categories were included in this analysis: population, age, and growth, race and ethnic composition, education, limited English proficiency and language isolation, racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty, household income and poverty rates, housing trends, cost-burdened households. The following slides provide some of the highlights of the analysis performed. Before we start with the highlights, we have a disclaimer. The following analyses were done with data and information prior to the shift in economic activity as a result of COVID-19. There are no adequate data sets available at this time that reflect current housing and economic trends in the city after the start of the pandemic. The city of Miami has been experiencing significant population growth since early 2000s. The city was accountable for 15% of the county's population growth from 2000 to 2010, and from 2010 to 2017, the city was responsible for 28% of the county's population growth. The age group that experienced the highest percentage growth is the 45 to 54 years cohort. Other groups with net positive percentage changes are the 25-34 and 55-59 cohorts, also working age groups. These age groups can provide an economic boost to the city and an opportunity to further expand resources and investment. When we talk about race and ethnic composition, it is key to keep in mind that since the 1970s, the city of Miami has had a designation of a majority-minority municipality, which doesn't necessarily mean that Miami has become increasingly diverse, but rather a city of immigrants. The Hispanic population growth over the past 7 years outpaced the growth rate of the city as a whole. The city's population grew by 13.8%, while the Hispanic population grew by 15.9%. The white non-Hispanic population experienced a slight decline in population percentages, even as it is estimated it added over 3,000 people, making up for 10.9% of the population. Likewise, Black African-American population had a small increase in individuals residing in the city, yet it continued to experience losses in population percentages. In the last 7 years, census figures indicate that the Black population in the city of Miami from 2010 to 2017 decreased 1.2 percentage points. According to the 2013-17 ACS estimates, only 16.3% of the city of Miami's population 25 years of age and over have a bachelor's degree or higher, and 19% of the city's population 19 to 24 years have less than a high school education. As we can see from these statistical figures, education in Miami is an area of great concern as communities with higher educational levels allow for more successful job placement, industry growth, and resident retention. Persons with limited English proficiency, or LEP, are those who do not speak English as their private language and who have a limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English. As many as 46,000 households, or 27% of Miami households, are linguistically isolated, which means that no member aged 14 years or over speaks English at least very well. Most census tracts in Miami qualify as a majority minority, where minorities comprise a large percentage of the tract. Recaps, or racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty, are census tracts that have a non-white population of 50% or more, and where 40% or more of individuals are living at or below the poverty line. As of 2018, 18 tracts qualify as recaps within the city. This is twice the number of recaps the city had in 2010. This means that poverty continues to further concentrate in particular areas of the city, even as unemployment dropped, income levels rose, and housing construction was increased. Again, this analysis was made with data prior to COVID-19, and we understand that the current pandemic only exacerbates this condition. The populations in these neighborhoods are mainly comprised of extremely low to moderate income households. The housing is mainly renter-occupied, and the housing structure is typically 50 plus years in age. Little new affordable housing has been developed in these neighborhoods in recent years. However, newer market rate housing is being developed or proposed in these neighborhoods, and gentrification has become more of a concern. Close to 57.8% of the city's household incomes are below $49,999 as per the 2017 American Community Survey data. Although the city's median household income has grown, the median household expenditure in the city averages $48,880 a year, as data from the Miami-Dade Beacon Council shows. This mismatch between wages and living costs could hinder a household's ability to climb the income ladder. Most city workers are employed in low-wage service sectors occupations, including retail, trade, leisure, hospitality, educational, and health services. Although poverty is not a protected class, it does fundamentally affect a household's ability to rent or purchase a home. The U.S. Census Bureau 2013 to 2017 five-year ACS estimates that 25.8% of Miami's population is below the poverty level, which is 1/4 of its residents. The national average is 14.6%. The city of Miami has the 5th highest poverty rate among benchmark cities in the United States. The highest percentage of population below poverty level is the Black or African American population at 38.3%. Hispanics comprise 25% of that group. Despite significant new construction activity since 2010 in parts of the city, the percentage of City of Miami occupied housing units continues to decrease, coinciding with a steady increase in both the total number and percentage of vacant units in the city, making Miami the city with the lowest homeownership rate among benchmark cities in the United States. Vacancy rates can help determine the health of a housing market. Unfortunately, Miami has what is considered to be a high vacancy rate. Most recent data indicated that the city has 31,779 vacant units. That is almost 16% of the total housing units in Miami. This indicates that there is no shortage of housing supply and that market forces would need to adjust down to meet supply and demand forces, making housing more affordable. However, if we dig deeper into the data, we find that there are 18,755 units not actually available, as these are units utilized for recreational, seasonal, or occasional use. Miami has become increasingly unaffordable and cost-burdening to its residents, especially those seeking low rental options. In May 2019, the FIU Metropolitan Center completed an analysis of housing supply and demand. The analysis looked at the number of households at each income level, the rent and purchase price affordable to each income level, and the city supply of housing units at those rent or at those prices. The analysis of affordable housing supply demand indicates that the city has a shortage of 69,465 affordable housing units. Cost-burdened households are defined as those expending more than 30% of their household incomes on housing costs, including the cost of utilities. Research indicates that cost-burdened households must cut back on other expenditures, including food, healthcare, childcare, and transportation, making them more vulnerable and unstable. Households spending more than 50% of their income are considered to be severely cost-burdened. Of the city 55.8% of cost-burdened households, more than half, or 31%, meet the definition of being severely cost-burdened. In fact, with 55.8% cost-burdened households, the city of Miami is one of the most unaffordable cities in the nation. The city's share of cost-burdened renters as a proportion of all households is 1.8 times the national average. The City of Miami continuously works throughout the year to implement the Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Plan via seminars to multiple segments of the community, in conjunction with general outreach via departmental activities. In addition, the city distributes free fair housing material at different city locations and at city-sponsored events relevant to affordable housing. In a partnership with Hope Inc., the city conducts its own fair housing educational workshops, also educating community-based organizations, disability advocacy agency staff and clientele, and local housing industry professionals. Workshops provide attendees with key information regarding fair housing laws and how to seek a redress of grievances related to housing discrimination, issues regarding reasonable accommodations, dwelling unit modifications for the disabled, housing opportunities for people with AIDS, and compliance with fair housing laws that protect against housing discrimination due to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, familial status, age, marital status, or sexual orientation. Now we will focus on the impediments to fair housing found throughout the analysis that was performed and show you some of the actions recommended to reduce the effect of these impediments. Impediment number 1, increase housing cost burden for approximately 55.8% of city households, renters and homeowners combined, due to the rising cost of housing in the city of Miami along with stagnant wages. A high percentage of City of Miami residents, both homeowners and renters, are paying more than 30% of their income for housing, defining them as cost burden. This increased housing burden must be addressed on a citywide level to prevent further loss of homeownership, increases in foreclosures and evictions, bankruptcies, and potential homelessness. So the recommendations to be able to address impediment number 1 are as follows. Leverage Miami Forever bond allocation, engage, inform, and work with city leadership to retain and create additional housing opportunities for extremely low, very low, and low to moderate income persons. Advocate for policies requiring that a larger percentage of rental units financed by government capital dollars be set aside for very low income household at 30% or below median income. Continue to implement the actions to increase affordable housing as identified in the 2019-2023 Consolidated Plan and the recommendations of the Draft Affordable Housing Master Plan at the discretion of City Commission. Continue funding single-family rehabilitation and replacement programs to aid in the preservation of homeownership, as well as the first-time homebuyer program to encourage new homeownership. Explore the potential of establishing a local tenant protection law upon review of other municipalities' best practices. Impediment number 2, very few multifamily buildings in the city of Miami seek FHA approval. Even though the bulk of Miami's housing stock is comprised of units in multifamily buildings, there is a significant lack of FHA-approved condominium buildings in the city. As of March 2020, there are no buildings in the entire city of Miami that are FHA approved. This means low, moderate, and middle-income workers, class persons who are interested in purchasing a home with an FHA loan cannot purchase a unit in any of Miami's multifamily buildings. Even when just 50% of the city's entire housing stock is comprised of multifamily buildings of 10 or more units. The recommendations are as follows. The Department of Housing and Community Development will continue to work with the Miami Realtors Association to further their efforts on a local, state, and federal level. We will also draft marketing materials targeting multifamily condominium associations with information on how to become an FHA-approved building, including the Miami Realtors Association's RAC brochure on this topic. Impediment number 3, the scarcity of developable vacant parcels, diminishing the new construction of single-family and or smaller apartment developments, thereby housing choice. There is land shortage in the city of Miami, specifically of developable land in the city. Some of this land has different residentially or commercially zoned, but specifically residentially zoned, there's vacant tracts, and many of these available vacant parcels are scattered throughout the city in different economically distressed neighborhoods, requiring development on an infill basis. A property is determined to be developable for a single family dwelling if it meets the minimum lot criteria of 5,000 square feet plus a minimum of 2 parking spaces per home. In addition, the city needs to consider how the application of zoning regulations and parking requirements can be modified or tweaked to encourage the development of single-family homes and smaller scale buildings that are 20 units or less. The recommendations for addressing impediment number 3 include continue to manage the citywide infill program and ensuring that the available city-owned parcels are used for the provision of affordable housing, support viable efforts by the city's planning and zoning board in relation to amending the city's zoning code to encourage small-scale development, thereby expanding housing choice for all residents, and continue to prepare requests for lien removals for eligible affordable housing properties. Impediment number 4, there is a lack of adequate federal funding for rental assistance programs. Federal funding vehicles for low-income housing creation preservation continue to be cut. Demand for Section 8 vouchers in all Miami-Dade communities, along with demand for public housing units, is startling. Unfortunately, for those who are not randomly selected for waitlists, there is no funding available to be able to assist them in meeting their monthly rental obligations. In addition, the latest HIV/AIDS housing gap analysis conducted in 2019 estimated that there were about 10,000 households living with HIV/AIDS in Miami-Dade County in need of housing assistance. Recommendations to address impediment number 4 include continue to accommodate as many HOPA clients as possible in the city's TBRA program, as well as continuing to fund the short-term rental mortgage and utility assistance program. Fund private developers to build affordable housing within the limits of the city in return for city funding a portion of the total cost of the project. The developer provides a predetermined number of affordable rental units to be rented to low to moderate income families. The number of affordable housing units in a project is based on the amount of subsidy provided by the city. And support PHCD in their efforts to develop HUD-approved RAD projects within the city of Miami. Impediment number 5, there are not enough affordable workforce housing units to meet the needs of city residents. It is well known that the term affordable housing is no longer just an euphemism for low-income families. Recent studies reveal that many low and middle-class working citizens cannot afford to live in communities where they live without being considered cost burden. The city of Miami's current housing market has been strongly influenced by a combination of real estate supply conditions occurring within larger Miami-Dade market and by international demand factors that have contributed to the escalation of property values in sales and rental rates, even when the area median income based on the most recent ACS stood at $40,327 for city residents. Some of the recommendations to address impediment number 5 include explore options to create workforce housing opportunities, incentives, bonuses to encourage private developers to build housing to serve this population, identify opportunities for intergovernmental collaboration to address housing affordability issues, continue to support any efforts that can create a dedicated revenue source for the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. At this time, there is none. Workforce housing, currently defined in Miami 21 as those City of Miami households with incomes that range between 60 to 140% AMI, should be studied and redefined to adjust the workforce definition to city households' incomes. And finally, impediment number 6, housing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability continues to take place. According to Hope Inc., there were 256 fair housing inquiries complaints over the 36-month period that originated from City of Miami boundaries. HUD research suggests that as much as 80% of housing discrimination goes unreported. As such, it is reasonable to conclude that there are many more cases of housing discrimination within the City of Miami that are left unreported. Some of the recommendations to address impediment 6 include conduct fair housing testing at least twice within the span of this AI, retest in areas where trends are identified in the monitoring process, provide regular fair housing education and training to housing providers to ensure compliance with fair housing laws, continue to collaborate with other organizations in fair housing training events, continue to ensure that marketing materials, brochures, postcards, public service announcements are available in the city official languages, including Spanish and Creole. All materials should specify where a resident should call to report a complaint. Use HUD-developed collateral, radio, print, television ads. Continue to include fair housing information during the Section 8 and HOPWA intake process and at the time of annual recertification. Well, now is finally your turn to assist the City of Miami by providing us with your input and comments for consideration for the final version of the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice for fiscal year 2020 and 2024. If for any reason you were not able to provide comments today in this live virtual public hearing, you still have the opportunity to provide written comments via email to rtazoe@miamigov.com until July 22nd, 2020. All your comments will be included in the final document of the plan. Now, we thank you for your participation in today's public hearing, and we will go and move for the comments section. Alex, were there any comments provided to you via the online comment form?
No, there was no comments provided on the online comment form at all.
Is there anybody at the podium set up in City Hall to provide interactive questions and answers?
Currently, there is nobody at the podium.
Very well. Having seen nobody at this point and having received no comments, we will close this virtual public hearing with the reminder that you are still able to submit comments until July 22nd, 2020 by writing to me at rtazoe@miamigov.com. And again, your comments will be included in the final version of the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Well, thank you very much for your participation, and we'll be adjourning the meeting.